Hello everyone, welcome back for another AI news show where myself and Kevin Kieller will be digging into some of the latest news headlines, and we're going to be talking to Craig McQueen, Vice President for AI Solutions at Softchoice, for his top tips on unleashing your employees' productivity with Microsoft Copilot, so watch out for that. Welcome to the show, Kevin. How's it going?
Well, it's going really well. I'm excited to have Craig and to talk with him on the show today. The last couple of days, it's been cooler here just outside of Toronto. And so it makes me think of fall coming. I mean, although I think it's going to warm up again. But the thing about fall is I find it's an energetic time. So I'm excited for that energy. The kids go back to school, although my kids are older. But to me, really, September seems often like the start of business. So I think we're going to move into a very exciting season. And of course, we have no lack of AI news to share with the audience.
I was going to say, plenty of energy in AI at the moment. I even saw, did you see the news that just got posted today about Condé Nast just penned a deal with OpenAI for
I didn't see that. I didn't see that yet. So after the show, I'll have to go take a look.
Well, just in the last few hours, they've penned a deal to give OpenAI access to all their publications. You know, Condé Nast have got tons of publications, but even in tech like Wired and whatnot. But
Right.
interesting because Search GPT is coming. I think Google. Unless they've got something up their sleeve, that ship might just get a little bit rocked in the next few months. But we'll see. Anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
certainly check that out. That's an interesting story. But anyway, we've got tons of interesting things to talk about today. As you say, we've got Craig on the line to talk to us about workplace transformation, specifically with Copilot. But first of all, we've got some news items to run through. So Kevin picked out a few stories today, all kind of similar theme, I suppose. But the first story that I picked out was a story that was recently published on The Conversation, and it's titled "Generative AI Hype is Ending." The story revolves around the waning hype of surrounding generative AI, highlighting that despite initial expectations, the technology has not yet delivered on its transformative promises. So many high-profile AI projects have been cancelled due to practical failures, leading to a period of disillusionment. So Kevin, keen to hear from you. How does generative AI's trajectory, through this hype cycle that it's seen compared to previous technologies that we've seen, and are we seeing a similar pattern, or is AI's development unique in some ways?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So I think the author of this, Vidomar Kovanovic, I believe, I'm sure he understands the difference, but I do believe that the article, and this will be kind of a key theme, blends generative AI just with, which are pre-trained large language models that people leverage, with building your own custom model. So I think, first of all, those are two very different things. And I think a lot of the articles we're going to highlight today, they blend that together. And while the authors may understand the difference, I don't think the audience does all the time. So first and foremost, I think that this leads to some of the challenges that are often cited, like you need to have a lot of good quality data. Well, that's true. But if you're using a pre-trained large language model, like one from, OpenAI, you don't actually. You just have to use it in a smart way. So I think that there's some very different things. And then I did take exception. He cites a study from RAND, and I went to the link in the actual study, and it says by some estimates, 80% of AI projects fail. I take a little exception with that because maybe I estimate 100% of projects fail or 10%. There was no real data backing that up. I think the point is valid that you have to be careful. A lot of these projects, if you go in not understanding some of the challenges, if you're going to build your own AI model, that is a tough go. And so I think, the author does a good job of highlighting that. But I'll comment on the overhype maybe on one of the other articles. But those were my thoughts on that particular article overall.
Great stuff. Well, the second article I picked out was the hard truths of generative AI in the enterprise, and this was a kind of opinion piece, I suppose, from Esther Sheen, published on CIO.com. This story kind of delves into the challenges that enterprises are facing as they adopt generative AI. So despite its rapid rise in usage, with 65% of organizations implementing it, companies are encountering significant obstacles. And we're going to be talking more about that today, of course, including talent shortages, high implementation costs, data quality issues she addressed in the article, and even legal uncertainty. So Kevin, I mean, a number of challenges mentioned in this story. How are enterprises supposed to balance innovation and the risk of AI implementations going bad? What do you think?
Yeah, I think she does a good job I think she says there's like 6 challenges. And the last one, though, wasn't actually a challenge. Her last point, as it were, is it's here to stay. So I'm going to start with that because I think that that's important. And organizations, to be competitive, they're going to have to figure out how to appropriately leverage both, general AI, which includes machine learning and different, kind of types of AI, and this generative AI. I do think, once again, in the article, she blends them a little bit because, for example, things like saying, the data, access to good data comes up predominantly when you're building your own model. But I do think, she talks about cost as an issue. In the first article, they were talking more about cost from an infrastructure perspective, but I think she does a good job in the article of saying, okay, if you're building your own model, you might need a lot of horsepower to run it. But even if you're using something like Copilot, that's not free. And so if adoption happens to peter out, you buy all these licenses and you may not be getting value from that. So I think she raises a very good point. And like all technologies, ultimately usage and, more importantly, adoption, you have to, achieve that if you're going to achieve the ROI that you often promise when you put forth the business case. And I'm sure we're going to talk about adoption with Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the third and final story I wanted to talk about was, similar to the first one. So I know you're going to kind of dig a little bit deeper into this one. But generative AI is getting kicked off its pedestal, says a story on Forbes. The narrative around generative AI is beginning to shift, they reckon. Recently, Goldman Sachs labeled it overhyped and wildly expensive, while Sequoia Capital warned that the AI bubble might be nearing its tipping point. Media outlets have echoed these sentiments, according to the article, with headlines suggesting that the AI hype is fizzling out. Now, the recent downturn, as we know, in the S&P 500 has further fueled speculation that generative AI or the bubble might be somewhat deflating. So, Kevin, bubble or boom, do you believe we're currently witnessing a deflation of generative AI as it stands, or is this merely a necessary recalibration? How do you see this impacting the future of AI?
Yeah, I think so. This is both, it's both true and false at the same time. So certainly from an investment perspective, I think, like venture capital pouring money into AI, everybody came up with an AI story. It didn't matter what your product was. It was, now with AI added. And you almost had to do that because investors were demanding that you had an AI story. So certainly, I think from an investment perspective, we're going to see a lot of startups try to wrestle with, well, how do they build a competitive advantage? And, and it is expensive if you're building your own model, if you're training it, the horsepower to both train and, infer, use the model can get expensive. And so I think that that's the truth part of it. The kind of like Gartner, trough of disillusionment, especially with respect to generative AI, I at Enterprise Connect said it's more of what I consider a canyon of confusion. So it's not so much that the technology is overhyped, it's that people don't know how to use it properly. They have, expectations around how meeting summaries work. And if you don't understand how to use that, and if you haven't received the proper training, whether you're an IT pro or an end user, I think you're not going to use the tool effectively. So specifically around generative AI, things like Copilot, I feel it's less that it was overhyped in terms of capabilities. The capabilities are there, but it's a new mindset and a new, regimen of training that we really have to implement to ensure that our users get the most out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and we are seeing these headlines a lot at the moment in the media, especially some of the bigger houses that are looking to grab those headlines and those clicks. I don't think there's a bust anytime soon, personally speaking, but we're going to talk to Craig shortly about this, so we'll see what he's got to say on that one as well. But it feels like there's still a lot of momentum, and even today I read another article about Nvidia's stock price has kind of resumed, and it's still doing as well as it was now. So plenty of interest in AI right now, it seems. So Kevin, it's AI minute time. What is today's top keyword or phrase that we're going to be delving into?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, what I'd like to do is to talk about oversharing. And this isn't specifically an AI term, but it certainly comes up a lot in the context of AI. So what is oversharing? Quite simply, it's the act of sharing access to content and information beyond the needs of the recipient. So, okay, that's a simple definition. But in practice, what does this look like? It could be, for example, that you shared access to a folder versus a file. Now, that seems relatively harmless, except then people, yourself or others, may put other files into that folder, and you may not have intended for the recipients to have access to those perhaps more sensitive files. Or it could be, for example, you shared too many permissions. So you wanted somebody to read a document, but they ended up with edit rights. And now a group of people might be changing a document, maybe in ways you didn't intend, or adding sensitive information to that particular document. And this is important. I think here's the key point. AI assistants, if they're properly implemented, so AI assistants like Copilot, Microsoft's done a lot of work in this respect, they don't have access to more than a user does. However, AI certainly might make certain information easier to find, either intentionally or unintentionally, because when you ask Copilot a question, you might have had access to certain documents, but it will find that, and it looks inside the documents, and maybe there was a salary spreadsheet that inadvertently you had access to, but most people don't go around, snooping in all kinds of documents. Copilot, in terms of trying to best answer your questions, Copilot for Microsoft 365 specifically, will use the semantic index to kind of surface information that perhaps, if the permissions weren't properly applied, they would have been overshared. So I'm sure this is likely to come up in our discussions with Craig as well, but that's oversharing in the context of AI.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. And I'd like to bring in Craig. Welcome to the show. Very nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Craig, can you firstly give us a little bit of background on yourself, what you do professionally and what you do at Softchoice?
Absolutely, and great to be with you today. Always had a fascination with computer technology. Kevin and I might compete on which one of us got our Commodore 64 first as a kid. And that landed me at Waterloo with systems design engineering. I've also been very fascinated on how another computer works, which is people. And so I did a master's degree at University of Toronto in human-computer interaction. And that theme of, computer technology, but also understanding people, how do those two work together? Because in the end, the technology won't do anything. And funny enough, that's really comes a lot up in AI, which we'll talk about today. Through my career, it's usually been building teams or capabilities, whether in an entrepreneurial sense. And at Softchoice, I've been here 11 years. Got a new role in January when part of our organizational strategy is to build out AI capabilities so that we can serve our customers. So myself and team, we have capabilities around adoption and change management, data, application development, so that our customers can be successful with their AI journey.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining, Craig. As you and I go back a long time, and we've been friends and colleagues for many, many years. So it's great to have you on the show. I know in your role you have overseen hundreds of Copilot assessments. So let's start with just you describing, okay, what exactly is a Copilot assessment, and why, if I'm a Microsoft shop, why should I consider doing a Copilot assessment?
Sure. Yeah. We set a target for the year, and we often set targets pretty high. Well, we exceeded that in May. And so the interest in understanding Copilot and what it means to an organization has been unprecedented. I haven't seen customers come to us about technology in such large volumes. And really, an assessment is to help understand how ready is the organization to bring Copilot into their employee base. And so we do look at security. And Kevin, you did point out the problem of oversharing. Our CIO would say, hey, organizations have benefited from security through obscurity, meaning nobody knows the files are there, so it's okay. But Copilot will surface that information. And so we do a high-level look at, well, what security policies do you have in place, DLP and retention. We also talk about organizational readiness. This is about change management and how ready is an organization to introduce change through their departments. And then finally, there's just a lot of confusion of Copilot because, of course, Copilot's been tagged to every single product within Microsoft.
Yes.
We're very focused on Copilot for M365. So how do you change the way that people work in the organization with the existing Office products through the use of Copilot, which is Copilot for M365?
Fantastic. Hey, Craig, I've got a question for you. Kevin's talked about oversharing. In reality, and from your experience, how many organizations have actually had this problem of oversharing? Is that something you've seen yourself?
It's hard to know because they don't necessarily want to know, but now they're being forced to. But I would say almost every organization has this problem. And the reason is often the default permission properties within Teams or OneDrive lead to this issue. And sometimes the default properties can be you copy a link to give to a person, and you think that you're only giving permission to that person, but the act of switching copy actually has opened it up to a large part of the organization. So if policies aren't set up carefully, simply by accident, the oversharing is going to kick in without people even knowing.
Interesting.
Now, I think, Craig, we're seeing a lot of data that Microsoft is publishing. They do, I love their Work Lab site and their Work Trend Index. And they and others are starting to better quantify the gains that this generative AI can deliver, whether it's Copilot or Zoom AI Companion or WebEx AI Assistant, whatever assistant you're using. But in the context of Copilot, as you say, Copilot for Microsoft 365, what do you see as the key obstacles that are preventing companies from moving forward and kind of gaining these potential competitive advantages?
Probably a few things. They're just not sure where to start. And it's not something that you want to turn on for your entire organization. You want to do it on purpose with an outcome in mind. And it really is about transforming the way people work. So you'd have to pick a department, sales, marketing, HR, and say, okay, well, here's how we understand that they work today and some of the work processes. Here's how they could do it differently with Copilot. And here's an expected outcome that we would see be different. And then really treat it as a program and change management within that work function rather than just deploying the licenses because that's not going to work. People might find it interesting, but they're not going to change the way that people work, and therefore they're not going to get the results that they might be expecting. So, one of the first barriers is not sure where to start,
Right.
And then the other one is security, which we've talked about. That is a concern of organizations: is am I opening up something that I'm not ready to deal with yet?
Right. No, that's great points. I mean, the security piece can be addressed, but I understand that that's scary, and it definitely needs to be addressed because security is of critical importance. And certainly, the not knowing where to start. I like that you laid out this very clear prescriptive process to identify a specific use case and apply it, as opposed to just saying, ta-da, now we have Copilot for all, right? So, thanks for that insight.
Craig, just to expand on that in terms of the best approaches. I mean, you said outcomes first. I think identify a use case that absolutely makes sense. Can you give us any examples of a recent project that you've been working on that really, I suppose, got over that finishing line with, and what was that kind of approach? Was there anything specific that happened along the way?
Yeah, and those Softchoice sells millions and millions of dollars of Microsoft licenses every year. We have to pay for them just like everyone else. And so we're very careful about our own Copilot adoption. So I'll share an example of how we're approaching it with our sales organization. And one of the key things that I give as a recommendation is make sure you have executive sponsorship. This is about change management. And any change management, the boss has to say, hey, here's why we're doing it, what we're expecting to achieve from it, and my expectation of you, employee base. And we made sure that our sales leadership was bought in on, it's okay if my team invests the time to learn and adopt Copilot within the way they work. And here's what I understand what we're going to get out of it. So then we designed some metrics to track. And another recommendation I have is it's often very difficult to bring a new metric into an organization because you have to, is the data clean? What's the reporting? And so my recommendation is, pick a metric that you have already. So for our sales team, it's number of meetings in a week. And we measure that religiously. And so pick a metric that you already measure that you think might change as part of your design. And then when you think about the training and adoption plan, do it in the context of work that they do, not features of the product. So what you don't want to do is, hey, today we're going to see Copilot in Word. Open up Word and let's go through it. Rather, for a salesperson, it would be, today we're going to learn about prospecting. How can you secure that key meeting with the new buying account? Well, let's talk about a prompt that you could write that really makes a email specific to that particular customer. And we've seen the results. Hey, you can actually get really good Copilot prompts that increase conversion rates to secure meetings. And so we've designed the training around, what work process do you have? And we don't want to necessarily teach them prompt engineering. We want to kind of give them the prompts. Because otherwise it's just too much thinking for them. But once they start to see examples of the prompts within a prompt library that we give them, then they're able to kind of create their own. And then we track it on, we're tracking the metrics on a regular basis. And the usage reporting is also key. Like, are people actually using it? And integration with Viva is coming along really well, which gives a early indication of how often are people using it, in addition to the KPIs that you're ultimately looking for from a business outcome.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So, I think I know the answer to this, but maybe you can expand on kind of some suggestions. So how important do you see the training aspect, but both for the IT pros and for the end users? Sometimes people say technology should be so simple that you should just be able to use it and there's no manual, but talk in the context of what you've seen both at Softchoice and with your customers in terms of the importance of, that IT pro and end user training.
Yeah, and it's, you need to put the work in. And what I mean by that is, hey, I could sign up for a gym membership and pay my monthly fees. I'm like, hey, how come nothing's happening? I signed up for this monthly thing. No, I got to get into the gym and do the work. But then you get results. And so when it comes to the training piece, it is about working differently. So it's not necessarily learning to use the product,
right,
but it's learning how are you going to operate differently. So if I am a salesperson and I'm doing hybrid meetings, I can use meeting summaries and action items. Everybody always talks about it, and it's great. But do you also know it's actually a really good sales coach? And a really good prompt is, hey, I was the salesperson in this meeting. This is what I was trying to achieve. What did I do well? And what could I have done better? It gives really good coaching. And so when we talk about, training and adoption, it's what are you going to do differently in your week and gaining that habit and change versus learning the features of where Copilot is within the different products.
Yeah, I love that emphasis on process change training versus feature training. That's a great distinction that you've made.
And then you mentioned IT pros. What's fascinating is there's actually very little technology that you need to bring in. Microsoft has already spent the billions of dollars building out the LLM, and it just connects into the products. So from a IT support and IT admin, other than the security discussion we've had, it's actually pretty light in terms of what you need to do to actually get it deployed from an IT perspective in your organization.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think circling back to those articles, Rob, you and I were discussing, some of them said, well, you got to have data scientists, and you do if you're building your own model. But, Craig, you make that point. Microsoft has invested, you're using these pre-trained models. Yes, they've got all the PhDs and all the data scientists to build Copilot, but you just have to figure out how to use it. So if you don't have data scientists, that's okay.
And in terms of where Microsoft are on that journey so far, Craig, I mean, they've been plugging in Copilot all over the place, haven't they, within the 365 suite? And I've been trialing it across various applications in my daily workflows and that kind of thing. And some things work really well, very intuitive, some don't. And I have to kind of like start Googling or start trying to figure out kind of what I'm doing wrong and that kind of thing. Where do you think Microsoft are on that? And, are they providing enough training? And, how do you approach that at Softchoice? Do you have to layer more and more training over the top of that?
Yeah.
How do you bring that together? Because I imagine training is a huge barrier here to success.
It can be, but I'll share a few different perspectives. And you're absolutely right. In some of the products, it doesn't work so well. And Microsoft's been pretty transparent. They said, you know what, Excel, don't invest a lot of time on that one. We're still working on it. It will be great, but it's not really, really good. And even PowerPoint, there's the promise of, hey, I can take a document and turn it into a great PowerPoint. It gives you a start, but it's not super. And so what I've seen happen a little bit is Copilot being bashed because it doesn't work great across all the products. Well, that's not the point. As we've talked about, it's, well, how do you change the way that you work and get the results from that? And you might only need two of the workloads, Teams and Word, or even just Teams and Copilot, the Copilot app within. And you may get a ton of business value out of it. So when I think about training, I wouldn't even bother training on all the Office products. It's, well, what is it that you're going to do differently in your day-to-day and your week-to-week? Let's put some focus on doing that, get the results you want, and then add more stuff later. And so you might not even touch PowerPoint and Excel, or because all what you're trying to do is, I want more effective meetings with my customers. I want to get really good at writing prospecting emails, and I want to use it as it's actually really good as for role play. So I want to get really good at selling a new Softchoice offering. You write up a prompt. Hey, act as an IT director. Here's the messaging that we have. Go. Let's have a session together. And you can even say, hey, be a crusty IT director who doesn't have much budget, and it will throw up the objections. So the bit of a long answer to, some of the Copilot products still need some work. And by the way, that's okay, because if you're getting value in the ones that are working really well, that's the point of using the product, not necessarily that you're using it across all of the workloads.
Yeah, that does make sense. So you don't have to innovate on day one, more just enhance the things that you're already doing, and I suppose that will pave the way towards discovering more ideas and be able to innovate, with AI as well. I think that's a really, really good point. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and so I think maybe as the last question, I'm going to ask you to kind of pull out your crystal ball. And like obviously generative AI and Copilot, it's really early days. But if you look ahead 5 years from now, like how transformative do you feel that this will be, Copilot for M365, and as it continues to evolve, just to the way that most organizations do work?
Yeah, and 5 years is actually really hard because the acceleration of the technology is just incredible. So it's 5 years we'll have generative video. What does that mean to the world? So I think there already is and will be a bigger gap between what the technology offers and what organizations are actually using. And so there'll be some organizations that adopt really quickly, and they will realize the benefits. And I think they should be thinking about, what does this mean for how we work internally and with our customers? So the big use case is contact centers. They will be completely transformed in 5 years, and we may not ever talk to an agent again, like a live agent, because the quality of the conversational AI is so good. Well, it's better than a person anyway. And I think there'll be other areas where it isn't just about reducing human labor, but the quality of the output will be better. Like we can already see the potential of how they may be better teachers. They may be better able to diagnose medical issues.
Right.
There'll be these point areas where, wow, they're better than people anyway. And so they're going to be plugged into these different areas. And that just shifts what the responsibility of people will be, because there are some things that will never ever be replaced. And it'll just put more emphasis on that. So I think depending on the domain area, when your kid goes to school, Kevin, yeah, as you said, ours aren't in that situation anymore, but maybe when their kids go to school,
right,
that will be very different in 5 years. When you go to see a doctor, that can be very different. And the technology is there today. It's going to be, what is the adoption going to be like over the next while, and how quickly will different countries and organizations incorporate it into changing the way that people operate?
Well, I appreciate you. That was a tough question. And as you say, 5 years, especially with respect to AI, is an amazingly long period of time, and it's hard to predict. But I appreciate your insights, and I suspect that your human-computer interaction degree will provide a great foundation, because that interaction will change, but it'll always, as you say, and I was glad to hear that there will be things that AI won't do as well as humans. So that's good news. So maybe, Rob, maybe the talk show 5 years from now, maybe there will still be human hosts. Here's hoping.
Well, I hope so.
There could be a whole bunch of chatbots deciding, hey, what's the future of humans in our organ?
There you go. Exactly.
Well, if it makes me a better journalist, then I'm all for it, Kevin. So we'll see how that goes. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Kevin and Craig, it's been great talking to you today. Lots and lots of really valuable advice for our viewers. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
And thanks to everyone for watching our AI show. If you've got some good takeaways from today's session, do give us a quick mention on social. And you can connect to myself and Kevin, and our links are always, as usual, in the description below. But for now, great to see everyone. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.